Jimin sobs, "You chose him over me." Jungkook's savage reply silences the staff and unearths a secret that could tear them all apart. "You chose him over me." Jimin's voice cracked as the silence in the studio shattered like glass beneath a boot. His fingers trembled, clutching a script that had long lost meaning. Jungkook didn't flinch. His jaw was clenched, breath steady, gaze unrelenting. The rest of the staff, makeup artists, camera crew, even the director, froze mid-motion as if time itself held its breath. Jimin's eyes shimmered with the kind of heartbreak that came only after years of trust. "Say something," he whispered, his voice a ghost of its former self. Jungkook exhaled through his nose, his response slicing the air with surgical cruelty. "You're not the only one who knows how to feel, Hayoung. You just act like you invented pain." The words didn't just hurt, they detonated. Jimin staggered a step back, blinking in disbelief as the weight of the betrayal slammed into his chest. The heavy studio lights suddenly felt like interrogation lamps. No one dared speak. A camera assistant lowered her clipboard slowly, mouthing a silent, "What just happened?" The producer exchanged frantic glances with the director, who whispered, "Keep the cameras rolling." Earlier that day, everything seemed normal. They were rehearsing for a reunion segment, one celebrating a decade of BTS history. Taehyung was supposed to arrive late, giving the others time to reflect on the past. But the moment his name was brought up, everything cracked open. Jungkook's shoulders had stiffened, Jimin's tone had faltered, and then came the accusations, sharp, jagged, years in the making. Jimin had always been the heart. He bled sincerity. He felt deeply. But with Jungkook lately, everything felt like performance. The smiles were hollow, the banter scripted. The space between them was filled with everything unsaid, nights where silence spoke louder than words, messages left unread, questions dodged with laughter. When Jungkook finally spoke again, his tone was colder than the air-conditioned room. "He was there when you were, that's all." Jimin's knees buckled slightly, and he caught himself on the armrest of the nearby couch. His throat burned, not just from the humiliation, but from the truth he didn't want to admit. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped showing up. He had gotten too used to being forgiven, too used to being needed. The staff quietly resumed movement, pretending not to hear every breath of the unfolding storm. But every corner of the room throbbed with tension. Jungkook turned away, stepping off the set and walking toward the hallway with a tight jaw, his shadow long and unsteady under the flickering ceiling lights. As he disappeared, Jimin remained motionless. Someone offered him a tissue. He didn't take it. His hands hung limply by his sides, eyes locked on the door Jungkook had vanished behind, as if still waiting for him to turn around. Outside the studio, Taehyung's car pulled into the lot. He stepped out, sunglasses shielding tired eyes, unaware that inside, everything had just changed. Taehyung pushed open the studio door with the ease of someone used to being watched, unaware that inside, every pair of eyes would soon shift to him like spotlights caught off cue. The second he stepped into the room, the residual heat of the argument hung in the air like smoke. Jimin hadn't moved from where Jungkook had left him. His gaze snapped to Taehyung, and something unreadable flashed across his face, shock, maybe guilt, or the kind of fear that comes when you realize the person you tried to protect is the reason you're bleeding. Taehyung tilted his head slightly, sensing the shift. "What happened?" he asked, voice calm, measured, but edged with intuition. No one answered. The crew avoided eye contact. The silence stretched too long, too loud. Jimin blinked, his lips parting, and then he whispered in a voice laced with disbelief, "You told him." The color drained from Taehyung's face. He stepped closer, lowering his sunglasses to meet Jimin's glassy eyes. "No, I didn't, I swear." "He knew everything," Jimin cut in, voice rising with every syllable. "He threw it in my face. The nights I didn't call back. The times I said I was fine when I was. The times I chose," his voice cracked. "You," Taehyung flinched. The room pulsed with a quiet dread, like standing too close to a storm cloud waiting to break. "You think I wanted this?" Taehyung hissed, low enough that only Jimin could hear. "You think I asked to be in the middle? You let it happen," Jimin shouted louder this time. "You saw how he looked at me. You saw what it was doing to him, and you said nothing. You let me fall while you stood there acting like it wasn't your fault." The door behind them slammed open. Jungkook strode back in, hoodie thrown over his head, but nothing could soften the fury in his eyes. "Don't blame him for your mess, Hyung." Everyone froze again. His voice was steady, too steady. "You used him as a shield, and now you're mad the bullets hit you anyway." Jimin turned to him, tears now unapologetic. "I needed someone. I didn't think I'd lose you over it." Jungkook scoffed, stepping closer, so close they were inches apart. "You didn't lose me because of him. You lost me because you treated my love like a convenience store, only open when you needed something." That line hit harder than anyone expected. Even Taehyung turned away, unable to meet either of their eyes. "That's not fair," Jimin murmured. "I was trying to figure myself out." "You figured it out real fast when he showed up at 3 a.m. and you answered his call," Jungkook said, his voice suddenly cracking. "But when I knocked on your door that night after the Seoul Awards, you didn't even open it. You left me standing there like some obsessed idiot." The memory sliced through the room. Jimin's hands shook. "I didn't know what to say," he whispered. "You were everything. I got scared." "Then you shouldn't have looked at me like I was your future," Jungkook snarled. "Because you ruined mine." Taehyung stepped between them finally, voice breaking like glass under pressure. "Stop, both of you. This is not how we fix it." "There is no fixing it," Jungkook snapped. "You can keep playing mediator, T, but you picked your side the moment you stayed." Jimin turned to him, breathless. "So that's it. You're choosing to hate me." "No," Jungkook said with a cold smile. "I'm choosing to forget you." The words dropped like grenades. Jimin gasped. "Don't say that," he begged. "Please, Jungkook, don't pretend like I meant nothing." "You didn't mean nothing," Jungkook said as he turned to leave. "You meant everything, and that's why it hurts like hell to see you with him." He didn't wait for a response. The door slammed behind him. Silence followed. Taehyung looked at Jimin, whose legs finally gave out as he collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into his hands. And Taehyung, who had been holding it all together, finally let his own tears fall. The staff dispersed quietly, the director signaling to cut the cameras, but the damage had already been captured. Something deeper than betrayal had just been exposed. Something raw, irreparable. Something that would go viral not in views, but in the pain of everyone who saw the truth written on 3 broken faces. "Why didn't you stop him?" Jimin's voice was hoarse as he looked up at Taehyung through tear-swollen eyes, his breath uneven and soaked in disbelief. Taehyung stood motionless, arms crossed tightly as if bracing himself against the weight of what he could no longer hold back. "Because maybe for once," Taehyung said bitterly, "he needed to walk away before you broke him more." Jimin blinked like he'd been slapped, chest rising and falling as silence expanded between them like a wound torn open. "You think I meant to hurt him," he whispered, barely able to speak the words. "I was drowning, and you," his voice cracked, "you were the only one who knew how deep I'd gone." Taehyung's jaw tightened, fists clenching at his sides. "And instead of swimming up, you pulled us both under. You let me become your secret. You let him become your mistake. You turned love into a battlefield and then asked us to fight without telling us why." "I didn't ask for any of this," Jimin said, rising shakily to his feet. "I didn't ask to fall for him. I didn't ask for you to hold me that night in Tokyo when I was breaking. I didn't ask for you to kiss me." Taehyung's eyes flared. "But you let it happen again and again. And when it was over, when the lights came on and the world returned, you chose silence. You let me become the villain in a story you wrote with your silence." The air turned electric with tension. Neither of them moved. From down the hallway they heard Jungkook's voice, a raised shout, then the slamming of a door backstage. "I never wanted to choose," Jimin said desperately. "I loved both of you in different ways." "That's not love," Taehyung snapped. "That's cowardice." The studio door opened again. This time it was Namjoon, followed by Yoongi and Hoseok, all of them stone-faced and alert. "What's going on?" Namjoon demanded, his voice sharp. "The staff's panicking." Jungkook's locked himself in the dressing room, the director's threatening to cancel the segment. "You should," Yoongi muttered. "This isn't a comeback special, it's a goddamn breakdown." "We're not canceling," Jimin said suddenly, standing straighter. "We owe it to the fans, we owe it to each other." Hoseok looked at him like he didn't recognize him. "You think the fans want to see you and Jungkook self-destruct on national TV?" "They deserve the truth," Jimin said, voice rising. They've seen the smiles, the choreographed closeness, but none of it's real anymore. We've been lying for too long. So tell them, Namjoon said, stepping closer. But don't use this stage as a confession booth. Don't make it about blame. If you want to be honest, start with yourself. He already did, Taehyung said coldly. Too late. Don't, Jimin warned, eyes blazing. Don't stand there and act like you didn't benefit from every second I leaned on you. I never asked to be your second choice, Taehyung shot back. You made that clear, Jimin said, teeth clenched. You said nothing when he started pulling away. You said nothing when I begged you to stop looking at me like I was the only one. Because I thought if I kept quiet, Taehyung said, voice breaking, you'd finally choose me. Silence. Then Hosok spoke, his voice quiet but firm. We're not just members, we're family. Whatever this is, it's killing us. Namjoon nodded. Fix it or leave it behind, but don't burn everything we built. Jimin's shoulders sagged. I don't know how to fix it. A knock came at the studio door. A staff member peeked in, nervous. He's asking for Jimin, she said quietly. Everyone turned. Only Jimin. Jimin swallowed hard. The others stepped aside. As he walked the hallway toward the dressing room, every step echoed with memories. First tour, late-night ramen, laughter after concerts, confessions whispered under hotel sheets. He paused at the door, hand hovering over the knob. He opened it slowly. Jungkook was seated on the couch, elbows on knees, eyes red but dry. The air between them was charged, heavy, volatile. You wanted me, Jimin said, voice trembling. Jungkook looked up. I needed to look at you one last time before I let go. Jimin's lips parted. Don't say that. Why not? Jungkook said with a hollow laugh. It's the only honest thing left between us. I never meant to betray you. You didn't betray me, Jungkook said. You erased me slowly, day by day, with every unanswered call, every canceled plan, every moment you gave to him while telling me you were tired. Jimin sat down, close but not too close. I didn't know how to choose without breaking someone. So you broke all of us, Jungkook whispered. Congratulations, now we're all in pieces. The silence held them captive. Then Jimin reached for his hand, but Jungkook pulled away. Don't, he said, please, don't touch me like you miss me when you never really chose me. I did, Jimin insisted, just not in the way you needed. Jungkook nodded. That's what hurts the most. Then without warning, Jungkook stood, walked past him, opened the door and walked away. Not with fury, not with drama, but with the kind of finality that comes when someone has nothing left to give. Jimin sat alone in the quiet, tears falling again, this time not from guilt or shame, but from the terrifying realization that love, once neglected, doesn't just fade. It walks away while you're still figuring out the words you should have said. Why are you crying now, Jimin? The voice came from the doorway, sharp, loaded with resentment and too familiar to ignore. Jimin looked up and there stood Taehyung, arms crossed, expression unreadable but his eyes burning with accusation. Jimin wiped his face quickly, trying to compose himself, but the storm inside him was far from settled. I didn't ask for you to come, Jimin said, voice cold. No, Taehyung replied, stepping in and closing the door behind him, but you knew I would. That's your specialty, isn't it? Calling without words, needing without admitting it. Jimin stood up abruptly, fists clenched, the dressing room suddenly feeling too small for the magnitude of their emotions. Don't start, he snapped. Not now. Start what? Taehyung asked mockingly. The truth, the part where you used my silence as permission, or the part where you looked me in the eyes and kissed me like he never existed, only to run back to him the second he gave you attention. That wasn't what happened, Jimin shouted, his voice cracking from the weight of too many buried truths. You don't get to rewrite it just because you're bitter. I'm not bitter, Taehyung hissed, stepping closer. I'm humiliated. I was the one who held you when you couldn't breathe. I was the one who sat with you through your breakdowns. And still, I was just a placeholder until Jungkook decided to forgive you. You think that didn't destroy me? I was falling apart. Jimin screamed, slamming his fist into the wall. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I loved more. Then you didn't love either of us enough, Taehyung cut in coldly, because real love doesn't leave a trail of collateral damage. The air was thick with fury and heartbreak, their shadows tangled on the floor as they stood inches apart. I tried to choose you, Jimin said, barely a whisper. I just didn't know how to live with the consequences. And now we're all paying for it, Taehyung said, stepping back like the distance could somehow shield him from the ache. Do you even realize what you've done? Jungkook, talking about leaving the group. Jimin's face froze. What? You heard me, Taehyung said, voice tight. He talked to Bang PD, said he's done with this, with us, with you. No, Jimin said, shaking his head violently. He wouldn't. He would, Taehyung said, his voice breaking. Because he gave everything to this band, to you. And now he feels like he's lost both. Jimin stumbled backward, breath caught in his throat, the room spinning with guilt and disbelief. No, he muttered again, as if saying it enough times would change reality. I have to talk to him. He won't listen, Taehyung warned. You broke him. You helped me, Jimin snapped, anger flaring as he turned on Taehyung. You kissed me, you touched me. Don't pretend like you didn't want this. I did, Taehyung said with venom. But I wanted the version of you that looked at me like I was enough. Not the one who flinched every time Jungkook's name was mentioned. I loved you, Jimin whispered. You loved the idea of me, Taehyung said. And now you're standing here crying not because you lost us, but because you got caught. Before Jimin could answer, the door burst open again. Jungkook stood there, phone in hand, eyes like ice. So this is where the truth finally comes out, he said, his voice dangerously low. Taehyung, thanks for confirming everything. What are you talking about? Taehyung asked, confused. Jungkook held up his phone. The mics were never cut. Staff forgot. I heard everything. Jimin's knees nearly gave out. Jungkook, don't, Jungkook snapped. Don't call my name like it still belongs in your mouth. You have to listen to me, Jimin begged. Please, I was confused. I was hurting. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, Jungkook said, walking closer. You turned me into a fool and you made him your accomplice. That's not fair, Taehyung said. You think I didn't try to stop this? You think that matters now? Jungkook barked. You both played with fire and now you're shocked we're all burning. Jimin stepped forward. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix it. You can't, Jungkook said simply. There's no fixing betrayal. There's only survival. He looked at both of them, jaw clenched, voice breaking as he said, You don't get to have me anymore. Then he turned and walked away. Again. But this time, neither Jimin nor Taehyung followed. Because for the first time, they realized they had nothing left to offer that wouldn't cause more harm. And for the first time, Jungkook didn't look back. The silence after Jungkook left wasn't just quiet, it was suffocating, a vacuum of everything once sacred between them. Jimin leaned against the wall, his breath hitching, his chest tightening with a weight no apology could lift. Taehyung didn't move. He stood still, eyes unfocused, lips slightly parted as though he was trying to find the right words in a language neither of them spoke anymore. Finally, Jimin whispered, He hates me now. Taehyung didn't look at him. You think you're the only one he hates? Jimin turned sharply, eyes wide. Don't start this again. I'm not starting anything, Taehyung said, his voice frigid. It's already over. It's all been done. The worst part is knowing it wasn't even the secret that broke him. It was the fact that we made him feel stupid for trusting us. Jimin pressed his fingers to his temple like he could erase the shame crawling under his skin. I didn't mean to make him feel that way. I didn't even realize how deep I was in until it was too late. You realized, Taehyung snapped, finally meeting his gaze. You just didn't care enough to stop. You had both of us hanging off a cliff praying you pull one up. Instead, you let go of both. You think I planned this, Jimin said, stepping closer, rage building behind the grief. You think I wanted this chaos. You think I wanted to fall for you and still ache for him in the same breath. I was a mess. I am a mess. But you, Taehyung, you kissed me knowing I was confused. You told me to breathe, then drowned me with your silence. Taehyung let out a bitter laugh. Don't twist this. Don't act like you were helpless. You're not a child, Jimin. You knew what that kiss meant. You leaned into it again and again. And now you want to stand here and act like I seduced you. I'm saying none of us were clean in this, Jimin yelled, voice raw. We're all bleeding and no one wants to admit who threw the first knife. Suddenly, the door opened again, but it wasn't any of them this time. Seokjin stood in the doorway, expression unreadable, but his eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had just listened too long outside the room and could no longer pretend he hadn't. So this is what it's come to, he said, stepping inside and closing the door softly behind him. I wondered how long it would take for everything to rot beneath the surface. But this is worse than I imagined. Hyung, Jimin started, but Jin raised his hand. No, I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to say something you both clearly need to hear. You didn't just hurt Jungkook, you betrayed the team. You turned this family into a battlefield, and now you're both standing over the ashes acting surprised there's nothing left to save. We didn't mean to. Intentions don't matter, Jin cut in. You think fans don't notice. You think we can go on camera and pretend like nothing's wrong when everything is wrong. The cracks are showing. The tension is bleeding through every smile. This isn't just personal anymore, it's public. And if this explodes, it won't just be about 3 broken hearts. It'll be about BTS falling apart in front of the world. Jimin's knees weakened. What do we do then? Just act like nothing happened? No, Jin said quietly. You face it, you own it. And you let him decide if there's anything left to salvage. The dressing room door opened yet again. Namjoon entered holding a tablet with trembling hands. You need to see this. He placed the screen down. It showed a clip already going viral on Korean forums and Twitter. It was footage leaked, raw of the moment Jungkook slammed the door after his outburst. The audio was painfully clear. You don't get to have me anymore. And then you meant everything, and that's why it hurts like hell to see you with him. The clip looped. Comments flooded the screen. Is this real? Was he talking about Jimin? Who is him? Did Jungkook just confirm a love triangle? Taehyung's face went pale. Jimin covered his mouth. Jin looked down. Namjoon whispered, we're trending #1 globally, under heartbreak, under betrayal. No one spoke for a long time. Then Taehyung asked quietly, is he okay? Namjoon shook his head. He's gone, disappeared after the footage dropped, left his phone in the green room, no one knows where he went. Jimin bolted. Without another word, he stormed out of the room, heart pounding like thunder against his ribs. Every hallway blurred into a maze of regret. He burst outside into the cold air, scanning the streets, ignoring the staff calling after him. His voice cracked the night. Jungkook. No answer. He turned a corner, breath ragged. Jungkook, please, and there he was, leaning against a vending machine, hood up, hands stuffed into his pockets, eyes red but dry. Jimin froze. Jungkook didn't even look up. You found me faster than I thought you would. You left without your phone, Jimin said, voice trembling. You scared us. Didn't mean to, Jungkook murmured. Just needed air. I saw the video, Jimin whispered. It's everywhere. Let them see, Jungkook said. Let them finally know that even idols bleed. Jimin stepped closer. Talk to me. Jungkook finally looked at him. Why? So you can explain why I was never enough. You were always enough, Jimin said, tears falling freely now. You loved me too purely, and I didn't know how to accept something that real. So you sabotaged it, Jungkook said, laughing bitterly. You gave pieces of yourself to him and then expected me to be whole with what was left. I'm sorry, Jimin choked. I never stopped loving you. Jungkook looked at him, broken and blazing. But you stopped choosing me. That's what love is, Jimin. It's not just about feeling, it's about choosing, every damn day. Then let me choose you now, Jimin said, voice desperate. Let me fix it. Jungkook shook his head slowly. I don't want to be someone you choose because you lost him. I want it to be your first decision, not your last resort. And with that, he stepped away, leaving Jimin standing under a flickering streetlight, soaked in shame, stunned into silence, finally realizing that sometimes the most brutal kind of heartbreak isn't being hated, it's being loved once, and then walked away from forever. The next morning, the air inside the dorm was unnaturally still, like the calm before a war that had already begun, but hadn't yet reached its loudest explosion. Jimin sat on the kitchen stool, head bowed over a cup of untouched coffee that had long gone cold, fingers trembling as he scrolled through the latest headlines on his phone. Every media outlet, every fan page, every news ticker was covered with the same names, the same theories, the same speculations. Jungkook, Jimin, Taehyung. The holy trinity of chaos now splashed across the internet in the ugliest colors. Photos of Jungkook leaving the studio alone. Paparazzi shots of Jimin chasing after him. A grainy clip of Taehyung sitting alone in the makeup chair, dead-eyed, as staff whispered around him. Fans dissected every glance, every lyric from old performances, every hug that now seemed too stiff, every smile that looked too forced. But it was the hashtags that hurt the most. Heartbreak of the century. Jimin broke Jungkook. Tkook was real. OT7 no more. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Jimin didn't need to look up to know it was Taehyung. He knew the rhythm of that walk. He knew too much. The tension crackled the second Taehyung stepped into the room. His eyes were swollen from a night of no sleep, face pale, but his spine straight, as if he was determined not to show just how much everything had shattered inside him. "We need damage control," Taehyung said flatly, not even bothering with a greeting. Jimin nodded slowly. "I know." "The label wants us to do a joint live," Taehyung continued. "You, me, Jungkook." Jimin blinked. He agreed to that. "No," Taehyung said, "but Bang PD says if we don't fix this soon, we're not just risking our image, we're risking the entire group." "So now we're puppets again," Jimin muttered, bitterness creeping into his voice. "Pretend like everything's okay for the sake of survival." "It's always been survival," Taehyung snapped. "The difference is this time it's our fault." Jimin stood abruptly, the stool screeching against the floor. "Don't pretend you're innocent in this, Taehyung. You let this happen too." "I know I did," Taehyung said, jaw tight. "And I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm asking for strategy." "So we sit next to each other," Jimin said, walking toward the window, "smile for the camera, act like we didn't rip someone's heart out between 2 album promotions." "Pretty much," Taehyung said with a shrug. "Unless you have a better idea." "Yeah," Jimin said, voice low, "tell the truth." Before Taehyung could respond, Jungkook entered the room. The energy shifted instantly. He wore sunglasses despite the dim lighting and a black hoodie pulled tightly over his head, but nothing could hide the exhaustion dripping from his posture or the fury simmering beneath his silence. "You both talk too loud," he muttered, pulling open the fridge. "Morning to you too," Taehyung said dryly. Jungkook ignored him. Jimin turned around. "Jungkook, don't," Jungkook interrupted, not even looking up. "Just don't." "We need to talk about the live," Taehyung said. "They want us on camera tonight. Damage control." "Then control it," Jungkook snapped. "I'm not your PR manager." "You're a part of this mess," Jimin said, stepping closer, his voice shaking. "You don't get to walk away and leave the rest of us to clean it up." Jungkook turned then, eyes blazing, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. "You made the mess, Jimin. You and your damn indecision. You strung me along, made me believe there was something still left between us while you let him climb into the spaces I was begging to be in. And now you want me to perform damage control. You should be on your knees fixing what you shattered." "I am trying to fix it," Jimin shouted, "but you won't even give me the chance to explain." "Explain?" Jungkook scoffed. "Explain what? That I was your emotional crutch until someone prettier whispered that he understood you better, that every I miss you was recycled from a night you spent with him." "Don't talk like that," Taehyung cut in, stepping forward. "You don't know everything that happened." "I know enough," Jungkook growled. "I know that I'm the only one who didn't lie." "I didn't lie to you," Jimin said, desperate now. "I lied to myself, that's the difference." "And that makes it better," Jungkook snapped. "That makes me less broken." "Stop," Taehyung ordered, voice shaking. "You think I wanted to fall for someone already caught between 2 worlds? I hated myself for loving him, but I did, and I still do." Jimin turned to him, eyes wide. "No," Taehyung said firmly. "I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of waiting for someone to love me in secret. If I'm going to be hated, let it be for the truth." Jungkook stared at him, breathing hard, lips trembling. "Then congratulations. You both deserve each other. Just don't expect me to sit beside you and pretend this is a brotherhood anymore." "You said you'd stay," Jimin whispered. "You said we were family." "Family doesn't lie like this," Jungkook said, voice hollow. "Family doesn't make you feel like a placeholder in your own home." Then he turned to leave, but before he did, he looked over his shoulder and said something none of them were ready for. "The only thing worse than being heartbroken is realizing you were never actually chosen, just temporarily needed." The door slammed behind him. Jimin fell back into the chair, numb, devastated. Taehyung didn't move. Outside, the world was spinning, the live broadcast creeping closer with every tick of the clock. But inside, the truth had already aired, and no amount of rehearsed smiles or media strategy could put out the fire now devouring them from within. The broadcast countdown had begun. 8 hours until the live stream that would either glue shattered illusions back together or let them explode into irreparable chaos. The production team had already arranged the studio, cameras mounted like eyes waiting to witness a resurrection or a funeral. The group's manager sent one last desperate message in the group chat, a simple sentence that carried the weight of the entire fandom. Whatever happens tonight, make it clean. But there was no clean way to fix what had been so messily destroyed. Not when feelings had curdled into resentment, not when apologies felt like weapons instead of remedies. In the practice room, Jungkook stood alone before the mirrors, watching his own reflection like it was someone else entirely. He looked hollow, like the boy who used to love this, singing, dancing, connecting, had been erased and replaced with a version trained to smile while bleeding internally. The door opened behind him, and without needing to turn, he knew who it was. "You're not supposed to be here," he said coldly. Jimin walked in anyway, closing the door softly behind him. "They said I could rehearse." "Then rehearse," Jungkook muttered, not looking away from the mirror. Jimin stepped beside him, keeping a cautious distance. "I wasn't going to talk." "You never had a problem talking before," Jungkook shot back. "You just had a problem telling the truth." "That's not fair," Jimin said quietly. "Nothing about this is fair," Jungkook snapped, eyes still locked on his reflection. "I gave you everything I had. I waited, I trusted, I loved you in ways I didn't even know how to love myself. And you," he paused, the words stuck behind clenched teeth, "you broke me because you couldn't decide who you were without needing both of us to validate your existence." Jimin's jaw tensed. "I didn't use you." "You did," Jungkook said, finally turning toward him, eyes blazing. "You used my devotion to feel less alone. And when that wasn't enough, you ran to the one person you knew I could never compete with." "I didn't run to Taehyung to spite you," Jimin said, voice rising. "He was there when I was drowning. You were too busy building walls." "I built those walls because I was trying to protect what little of me I had left after loving you," Jungkook shouted. "I built them because every time I looked at you, I saw someone who didn't know how to stop tearing me down with his silence and pretending it was mercy." Jimin stepped closer, hands trembling. "So this is it, we're enemies now?" "No," Jungkook said bitterly. "You can't be enemies with someone who stopped meaning anything." That lie tasted sour on his tongue the moment it left his mouth. He still loved him. It was the tragedy of it all. The door burst open again and Taehyung entered, jaw tight, eyes narrowed. "The manager said you're not allowed to kill each other before the live," he said flatly, but the joke didn't land. Jimin turned to him, emotions raw. "You should go." "No," Taehyung said, walking in. "I'm tired of being the one who's always dismissed like I'm the footnote in your story." "That's not what this is," Jimin said. "You two have unresolved mess," Taehyung continued, "and I keep getting dragged into it like I was the one who betrayed somebody. But I didn't take you from him, Jimin. You gave yourself. Don't rewrite history now that the spotlight burns a little too bright." "You think this is easy for me?" Jimin cried. "You think watching both of you fall apart is something I wanted? You wanted love without the cost," Taehyung said darkly. "And now you're paying it with all our futures." "Then why didn't you stop me?" Jimin shouted. "If you knew I was broken, why did you keep holding me like I was whole?" "Because I was selfish too," Taehyung admitted. "Because I wanted something that finally felt real, even if it was borrowed, even if it was doomed." Jungkook ran his hands through his hair, packing, trying to breathe. "This can't happen here," he muttered. "We're supposed to go live in hours. We're supposed to smile, dance, talk about friendship and brotherhood like none of this happened." "Then let's cancel," Jimin said suddenly. "Let's not pretend, let's walk away from this lie." "And destroy everything?" Jungkook asked. "Millions of fans, 10 years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. You'd burn it all because we got messy." "No," Jimin said, "but I can't go on stage and lie anymore." "Then tell the truth," Taehyung said. "Live, in front of everyone. If we're going to be exposed, let's do it on our terms." The room fell into a stunned silence. Jimin's lips parted. "You're serious?" "I'm done hiding," Taehyung said. "I'm done letting narratives be shaped by people who don't know us. If we're going to break, let it be by our own hands, not the world." Jungkook looked between them, jaw clenched. "You want to go live and just confess?" "Not everything," Jimin said, "but enough to stop pretending, enough to take back control." "That's career suicide," Jungkook muttered. "Maybe," Taehyung said. "Or maybe it's salvation." The idea settled like wildfire in the air. Dangerous, untamed, tempting. They looked at each other, each weighed down by regret, secrets, love, betrayal, and something else that hadn't yet died. A final chance at honesty, not for the cameras, not for the fans, for themselves. Later that night, when the live broadcast began, millions tuned in expecting a polished segment filled with laughter, nostalgia, and shallow apologies. But what they got instead was a stage where three men sat, unsmiling, the lights low, and the silence louder than any music they had ever made. Jungkook leaned forward, eyes steady on the lens. "Before we start," he said, "we need to say some things. Things that might change how you see us, but they're true, and we owe you that." The world held its breath, and BTS broke the fourth wall, not as idols, not as performers, but as broken brothers who finally chose truth over illusion. The silence after Jungkook's opening words on the live broadcast was so heavy it felt like it pressed against the audience's chests through the screen. Millions of viewers staring at three faces that looked nothing like the idols they thought they knew. No smiles, no scripted warmth, only exhaustion and truth trembling just beneath the surface as the red live icon blinked mercilessly above them. Jimin swallowed hard. His hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles had gone white, while Taehyung stared straight ahead, jaw locked, eyes dark with resolve and fear in equal measure. "This isn't easy to say," Jungkook continued, voice steady but raw, "and we didn't plan it for attention or sympathy. We planned it because pretending has become more painful than honesty." The comment feed exploded instantly, hearts flooding the screen alongside frantic messages asking what was happening, begging them to stop, demanding answers, accusing, defending, breaking apart in real time just like the three men sitting under the studio lights. Jimin leaned forward then, his voice shaking as he spoke. "I've made mistakes. I hurt people I love because I was scared of choosing, scared of losing, scared of facing myself. I tried to hold on to comfort instead of commitment, and in doing so I caused real damage." The words landed like a confession and an apology wrapped together, and Taehyung closed his eyes briefly before adding, "I was part of that damage. I crossed lines I shouldn't have crossed, not because I wanted to destroy anything, but because I was lonely and selfish, and convinced myself that silence was safer than truth." Jungkook let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his lungs for months. "And I stayed quiet too long," he said, his voice finally cracking. "I thought loving someone meant enduring everything without complaint. I thought if I was patient enough, loyal enough, I'd be chosen without having to ask. But love doesn't work like that." Jimin turned to him instinctively, eyes filling with tears, and the movement alone sent another wave of chaos through the comments as fans dissected the glance frame by frame. "I never meant to make you feel replaceable," Jimin said softly, forgetting the camera for a moment. "But intentions don't erase impact," Jungkook replied, not unkindly, just honest. "And the impact broke me." Taehyung shifted in his seat, his voice lower now, stripped of defensiveness. "This isn't about choosing sides. It's about owning what we did and what it cost. We're not here to justify ourselves." The producer off camera was visibly panicking, but no one dared interrupt as Jungkook looked straight into the lens again. "We don't know what happens after tonight," he said. "We don't know how this affects the group, our careers, or how you see us, but we know we can't keep lying to protect an image while we're falling apart behind it." Jimin nodded, tears finally spilling as he added, "If you're angry, you have every right to be. If you're disappointed, we understand. All we ask is that you remember we're human before we're idols." The comments slowed then, shifting from outrage to shock, from denial to grief, as the reality of what they were witnessing sank in. Taehyung spoke one last time, voice steady but heavy. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it honestly, together or apart, but not in silence anymore." The live ended shortly after, the screen cutting to black while the world outside erupted, headlines rewriting themselves in real time, fandoms fracturing and healing simultaneously. And inside the studio, three men sat motionless, the weight of truth finally off their chests but the consequences only just beginning to settle, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again, yet strangely aware that for the first time in a long while, what they had said was real. The moment the cameras shut off, the studio erupted, Not with applause, but with chaos muffled by professionalism barely holding together as staff whispered urgently into headsets. Managers argued in hushed but frantic tones, and someone knocked over a light stand that clattered to the floor like punctuation, to a sentence that had just rewritten their lives. Jimin remained seated, staring at the black monitor as if it might turn back on and undo everything, his ears ringing, chest tight, lungs struggling to remember how to breathe normally. Taehyung stood up abruptly, running a hand through his hair, packing in tight circles. "That was either the bravest thing we've ever done," he muttered, voice shaking, "or the dumbest." Jungkook didn't answer. He was still sitting, elbows on his knees, head bowed, staring at the floor like it might give him instructions on what came next. "Say something," Taehyung snapped, the tension finally boiling over. "You started this. You don't get to go silent now." Jungkook looked up slowly, eyes red, jaw tight. "What do you want me to say? That I feel better? I don't. I feel exposed. I feel like my heart just got dissected in front of millions of people who think they own it." Jimin stood suddenly, chair scraping loudly. "You think I feel any different?" he shot back, anger and fear colliding. "I just admitted I hurt the person I love most on live broadcast. I basically handed the world permission to tear me apart." "You didn't just hurt him," Taehyung snapped, pointing between them. "You dragged all of us into it. You think this only affects you too? The company is already talking about hiatuses, contract reevaluations, solo schedules. This could fracture everything." "Then maybe it should," Jungkook said quietly, the room falling silent at the words. Jimin's head snapped toward him. "What? Maybe everything that's built on pretending deserves to crack," Jungkook continued, standing now, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "I'm tired of sacrificing my sanity to protect a narrative that keeps hurting us. I'm tired of being the strong one while breaking in private." "So what?" Jimin demanded, tears threatening again. "You want to leave? You want to walk away from all of this?" Jungkook laughed bitterly. "You're asking me that now. Answer me," Jimin said, stepping closer, voice breaking. "Because if you leave, don't pretend like it won't destroy me." Taehyung scoffed. "Funny how you're worried about destruction now." Jimin spun on him. "Don't do that, not now." "No," Taehyung fired back. "Now is exactly when we do it, because I'm done being the quiet one who absorbs the fallout while you two circle each other like I'm invisible. I loved you, Jimin, not as a distraction, not as a mistake, and I won't be treated like collateral damage." Jimin froze, the words hitting deeper than any accusation. "I never meant to." "Intentions again," Taehyung interrupted sharply. "I'm done listening to intentions." Jungkook stepped between them instinctively, hands raised. "Stop, this isn't helping." "Then what does?" Jimin cried. "Because I don't know how to fix this anymore. I don't know how to be enough for either of you." "You don't have to be enough for everyone," Jungkook said, voice softer but heavy. "You just have to be honest, and that honesty might mean letting go." The word sliced through the room, letting go. Jimin shook his head, stepping back as if physically struck. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "I already did," Jungkook replied, eyes glistening. "I lost the version of you who chose me without hesitation. I'm just finally admitting it." Taehyung turned away, pressing his fingers into his eyes. "This is unreal," he muttered. "We just went live, shattered the fandom, and now we're standing here like three people who don't even know if they're still a group." A manager burst into the room then, face pale. "You need to see this," he said, holding up a phone. The screen showed breaking news alerts stacking one after another, international headlines screaming about honesty, betrayal, bravery, collapse, fans outside the building already gathering, some crying, some shouting, some chanting their names like a prayer or a curse. Jimin's knees felt weak. "What have we done?" Jungkook stared at the screen, then slowly looked away. "We told the truth," he said quietly. "And the truth doesn't ask permission before it changes everything." The room fell silent again, heavier than before, because now the fight wasn't just between three hearts. It was between who they had been for the world and who they were brave enough to become when everything finally burned. The hallway outside the studio vibrated with noise that no soundproof wall could fully contain. Chants bleeding through concrete, reporters shouting questions into the night, fans crying, arguing, pleading as if the truth they had just witnessed demanded an immediate verdict. And inside that pressure cooker of a room, Jungkook finally snapped, slamming his palm against the table so hard the surface rattled and everyone jumped. his voice erupting raw and unfiltered. "I can't breathe in this place anymore." The words spilling out like a confession and a threat all at once as Jimin stared at him in shock. "What are you saying?" His voice small, terrified, Jungkook packing now like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. "I'm saying this life is killing me. The expectations, the pretending, the way love gets weaponized and turned into content. I loved you quietly for so long and it destroyed me." Jimin stepping forward, tears streaking down his face. "Then let me love you loudly now. Let me choose you without fear." Taehyung letting out a sharp laugh that cut through the room, bitter and wounded. "You hear yourself, Jimin. You only speak in absolutes when it's already too late." Jimin spinning toward him, voice breaking into anger. "You don't get to lecture me like you weren't part of this. Like you didn't hold me and tell me I deserved to be loved when I couldn't even look at myself." Taehyung's eyes flashing. "I meant every word, that's the difference. I didn't love you halfway." Jungkook stopping dead, turning to Taehyung with a cold intensity. "And you knew I loved him, you knew it, and you crossed the line anyway." Taehyung stepping closer, jaw clenched. "And you think I didn't hate myself for that? You think I didn't lie awake every night knowing I was standing in the middle of something sacred and ruining it just by breathing?" Jimin shouting now, voice cracking. "Then why didn't any of you stop me? Why did everyone keep letting me fall apart?" Jungkook turning on him, eyes blazing with hurt. "Because you didn't want to be stopped. You wanted to be saved without changing." The words landing hard, final, Jimin recoiling as if struck, whispering. "That's not true." Jungkook's voice lowering dangerously. "It is, and it's the part you still refuse to face." Taehyung exhaling sharply, shoulders sagging as the fight drained into something heavier. "We're tearing each other apart in a room full of people who are waiting to decide which one of us is the villain." The manager interrupting desperately. "Security says the crowd outside is growing. This is getting out of control." Jungkook laughing humorlessly. "It already is." Jimin grabbing Jungkook's sleeve, desperation spilling over. "Don't leave like this, please, not again." Jungkook looking down at the hand gripping him, gently but firmly pulling away, his voice shaking despite his resolve. "Every time I stay, I lose myself, and I can't do that anymore, not for you, not for anyone." Jimin collapsing into a chair as if his body finally accepted what his heart couldn't, sobbing openly now. "I never wanted to hurt you." Jungkook pausing at the door, not turning back. "I know, and that's the cruelest part." Taehyung standing frozen between them, eyes wet, realizing there was no side left to choose, no way to undo the damage, only consequences waiting patiently. And as Jungkook stepped out into the noise and flashing lights, the door closing behind him with a soft but devastating click. Jimin covered his face with his hands, shaking, whispering his name like a prayer already unanswered. While Taehyung stared at the empty space Jungkook had left behind, understanding too late that some truths don't heal, they only reveal how deep the wound has always been. The door hadn't even fully closed behind Jungkook before the room collapsed into panic. A manager shouting his name into a phone, another staff member swearing under their breath, and Jimin suddenly on his feet again, eyes wild, voice hoarse as he yelled. Where is he going? No one answering because no one actually knew, Taehyung stepping forward sharply, grabbing Jimin's arm hard enough to ground him. Don't chase him like that, you'll make it worse. Jimin ripping his arm free, shaking his head violently. You don't get to tell me what makes it worse anymore. His chest heaving as the realization finally hit him with brutal clarity that Jungkook hadn't stormed out this time. He'd left with intention, with finality, with something dangerously close to resignation. And the weight of that crushed Jimin's lungs until he gasped. He's not coming back, is he? Taehyung swallowed, his own voice trembling despite his effort to stay composed. I don't know, the words sounding like a confession of failure, and that uncertainty ignited something feral inside Jimin as he turned toward the door, shoving past stunned staff, sprinting down the hallway while his name echoed uselessly behind him, his shoes slamming against the floor in a desperate rhythm as memories assaulted him with every step, Jungkook laughing in practice rooms, Jungkook waiting outside doors. Jungkook loving him quietly, faithfully, until there was nothing left, and when Jimin burst outside into the chaos of flashing cameras and shouting fans, rain beginning to fall in thin, cold streaks like the universe itself cracking. He spotted Jungkook near the security line, hood pulled low, shoulders rigid as reporters screamed questions that cut like knives. Is BTS breaking up? Was Jimin cheating? Is Taehyung the reason? And Jungkook didn't answer, didn't react, just kept walking until Jimin screamed his name. Voice breaking through the noise so violently that even the crowd faltered, Jungkook freezing mid-step, his back stiffening as if bracing for impact before slowly turning around, their eyes meeting through rain and chaos and years of love and damage. "Please," Jimin cried, pushing past security, hands shaking as he reached him. "Don't do this, don't leave like this." Jungkook's jaw clenched, pain flashing raw across his face before hardening again. "You already watched me leave 100 times, Jimin. You just never stopped me before." Jimin shaking his head desperately, tears mixing with rain. "I didn't understand then, but I do now, I swear I do." Jungkook letting out a hollow laugh that sounded more like a sob swallowed too late. "You always understand when it's already too late." Taehyung appeared behind them then, breathless, eyes red, voice cutting through the tension. "Jungkook, running away won't fix this." Jungkook turning sharply, anger flaring. "This isn't running away, this is choosing myself for once." Taehyung flinching but standing his ground. "And what about us? What about everything we built together?" Jungkook's voice cracked despite himself. "That's exactly why this hurts, because I built it while breaking myself." Jimin stepping closer, voice barely audible. "Then let me break with you, let me stay." Jungkook closing his eyes, shoulders shaking for a brief, devastating second before he opened them again, resolve burning through the pain. "I don't want your guilt. I wanted your choice when it mattered." The silence after that sentence roaring louder than the crowd as Jimin's face crumpled completely, knees buckling as he whispered, "I love you." Jungkook staring at him with something like mourning in his eyes. "I loved you too," emphasizing the past tense like a wound carved open, then turning away again, disappearing into the waiting car as security moved in, the door shutting, the engine starting, and Jimin collapsing onto the wet pavement as Taehyung caught him too late, the car pulling away into the night while the world watched, and for the first time since the truth had been spoken. There was no argument left, no defense, no anger to hide behind, only the unbearable knowledge that love, once neglected, doesn't scream when it dies. It simply walks away while you're still begging it to stay. The rain didn't stop when the car disappeared into the night. It kept falling as if determined to wash something away that refused to come clean. Jimin still on the pavement, chest convulsing as he gasped for air like someone dragged back from underwater too late, Taehyung kneeling beside him, hands hovering uselessly because even touch felt dangerous now. "Get up," Taehyung said urgently, voice strained. "This isn't safe, everyone's watching." Jimin laughed weakly through tears, a broken sound that startled even himself. "Let them watch." They already saw everything else. Cameras flashed relentlessly, fans shouting his name mixed with accusations and pleas. And somewhere inside the building Namjoon was arguing with security while Yoongi stood silent, fists clenched, knowing words would only make it worse. Taehyung finally pulling Jimin to his feet, half carrying him back inside as reporters screamed questions that followed them like curses. "Is Jungkook quitting? Is this Jimin's fault? Were you two together behind his back?" And the doors slammed shut, cutting off the noise but not the damage. Inside the hallway, Jimin shoved Taehyung away suddenly, rage flaring through grief. "Why did you follow me?" Taehyung stared at him, stunned, then snapped back. "Because someone has to keep you from destroying yourself." Jimin's eyes burned. "You don't get to play hero now." Taehyung's voice cracked as he fired back. "And you don't get to pretend I didn't lose him too." The words hanging heavy as Jimin froze, realization slamming into him that Taehyung wasn't standing there unscathed. His hands shaking, his face pale, his eyes hollow with the same loss, just shaped differently. "He won't answer my calls," Taehyung admitted bitterly, holding up his phone. "He blocked me." Jimin's breath hitched. "He blocked me too." And that shared silence felt more brutal than shouting because it confirmed what neither of them wanted to say out loud. Jungkook wasn't cooling off, he was cutting ties. Namjoon entered then, face tight with restrained fury. "This has gone too far," he said, voice low but sharp. "The company is panicking. Shareholders are calling and Jungkook just sent a message. Jimin snapped his head up. What did he say? Namjoon hesitated, then spoke. He said he's taking an indefinite break and doesn't want contact until he's ready. Jimin staggered backward like he'd been punched, whispering, indefinite. Yoongi finally spoke from the corner, his voice flat but heavy. That's not a break, that's someone protecting himself because he's done bleeding for other people. Jimin shook his head violently. I can't accept this, I won't. Taehyung's voice turned sharp, desperate. You don't get to accept or reject it, this isn't about you anymore. Jimin rounded on him, tears streaming again. Everything is about me, that's the problem, isn't it? The self-awareness cutting deep, Namjoon sighed, rubbing his temples. We're suspending group activities for now. The words detonating in the room. Hosok's sharp inhale audible, Jin's jaw tightening and Jimin sinking into a chair, hands over his face, whispering, I broke BTS. Taehyung crouched in front of him, voice trembling despite his effort to stay strong. No, we all did, but you're the one who has to live with knowing you were loved deeply and didn't protect it. Jimin looked up at him. Eyes red and empty. I would give anything to go back. Taehyung swallowed hard, pain flashing across his face. So would I. Outside the building the rain finally began to ease, but inside the storm had only shifted shape, moving from shouting crowds and flashing lights into something far more dangerous and quiet, regret. Because somewhere out there Jungkook was alone, choosing himself for the first time, and the people he left behind were only just beginning to understand the cost of being chosen too late. The dorm that night felt like a mausoleum, every light too bright, every shadow too long, the absence of Jungkook screaming louder than any argument they'd ever had. Jimin packing the living room with frantic steps while Taehyung sat rigid on the couch, jaw clenched so hard it looked painful, the air thick with things neither of them wanted to say but couldn't stop circling. He didn't just leave the building, Jimin muttered, voice shaking. He left us. Taehyung scoffed bitterly, eyes fixed on the floor. Don't say us like we're standing on equal ground here. Jimin spun toward him, anger flaring through the grief. You think this doesn't destroy you too? Taehyung snapped back instantly. It does, but I'm not the one who made him feel disposable. The words landing like a slap, Jimin's chest tightening as he fired back. You think you didn't play a role in that? Taehyung rose abruptly, voice sharp and raw. I never promised him anything while holding someone else's heart hostage. Silence crashed between them, heavy and brutal, Jimin running his hands through his hair, voice breaking. I didn't know how to choose without losing everything. Taehyung's eyes burned. And now you've lost him anyway, the truth settling like poison, Jimin collapsing onto the armchair, staring blankly ahead. He said he loved me, he whispered. As if saying it softly might make it true again, Taehyung's voice dropped, dangerous and honest. He loved you more than you loved yourself, and you punished him for it. Jimin flinched, tears welling. Why didn't anyone stop me? Taehyung laughed hollowly. Because you didn't listen, you never listen when you're afraid. The room vibrating with unresolved rage and regret until Jimin suddenly stood again, resolve flickering desperately in his eyes. I'm going to him. Taehyung froze. Don't, Jimin insisted. I have to, even if he hates me, even if he slams the door in my face. Taehyung's voice cracked as he shouted. And what if he breaks completely because you can't let go? Jimin stepped closer, eyes blazing with desperation. Then I'll live with that, but I won't live with doing nothing. Taehyung stared at him, torn between fury and understanding, finally whispering, You're still choosing yourself. Jimin swallowed, nodding slowly, maybe, but this time I'm choosing to face the consequences. His phone buzzed suddenly, both of them freezing as Jimin stared at the screen, breath hitching. It's him, Taehyung whispered, disbelief and dread colliding. Jimin answered with shaking hands. Jungkook. A long pause, then Jungkook's voice came through, quieter, colder, exhausted. Stop following me. Jimin's heart shattered all over again. I just want to talk. Jungkook exhaled sharply. Talking is how you kept me stuck. I need distance. Jimin's voice broke completely. I'm sorry. Jungkook laughed softly, a sound that hurt worse than yelling. You keep saying that like it's supposed to bring me back. Taehyung watched helplessly as Jimin whispered, I love you. Jungkook's silence stretched unbearably before he answered. Then let me go. And the call ended, the finality in that click echoing through the room as Jimin sank to the floor, sobbing openly now. Not dramatic, not loud, just utterly undone. Taehyung standing there frozen, realizing with sick clarity that Jungkook wasn't disappearing out of anger but out of survival, and that the most controversial truth of all wasn't what the world saw on live broadcast, but what no camera could capture now. The moment when love stopped fighting and chose to walk away. The night bled into morning without permission, the dorm lights still on, the city outside eerily quiet as if the world itself had stepped back to watch what they would do next. Jimin still on the floor where the call had ended, throat raw, eyes empty, Taehyung standing over him with a look that was no longer just anger but something darker and more frightened. "He told you to let him go," Taehyung said quietly, the words heavier than shouting, Jimin lifting his head slowly, voice hoarse and stripped bare. "He told me to disappear from his life like I never mattered," Taehyung's jaw tightened. "That's not what he said," Jimin laughed bitterly, pushing himself up against the couch. "That's exactly what it means, isn't it? Distance, silence, erasure," Taehyung exploded then, the restraint finally snapping. "You don't get to rewrite his pain to make yourself the victim." Jimin shot to his feet, rage flaring through devastation. "And you don't get to act like you weren't standing right there when everything collapsed." Their voices clashed violently in the quiet dorm, years of buried resentment tearing free, Taehyung shouting, "I loved you honestly, not selectively. I didn't keep him as a backup," Jimin screaming back. "You knew I was broken and you still stepped closer," Taehyung's eyes flashed with hurt. "Because I thought loving you might save you." Jimin's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow cut deeper. "It didn't save anyone." Silence slammed down between them, thick and suffocating. Taehyung dragging a hand down his face, voice shaking despite himself. "Do you know what he said to me before he left?" Jimin looked up sharply. "What?" Taehyung swallowed hard. He said, "I hope one day you stop loving people who are already gone." The sentence ripped through Jimin like a blade, his breath hitching as he staggered back, whispering, "He said that because of me." Taehyung nodded slowly, pain etched into every line of his face. "He said it because we both taught him that loving deeply only gets you abandoned." Jimin sank back onto the couch, hands gripping his hair, rocking slightly as the weight of it crushed him. "I never wanted to turn him into that," Taehyung's voice broke. "But you did, and now he's rebuilding himself without us." Jimin looked up suddenly, desperation igniting again. "Then I'll wait," Taehyung stiffened. "What?" Jimin's eyes burned with something reckless and dangerous. "I'll wait no matter how long it takes, months, years, I don't care. I'll prove I can choose him even when he's gone." Taehyung laughed incredulously, a sound laced with pain. "You think that's romantic?" "That's obsession," Jimin snapped back. "You don't get to define my love." Taehyung stepped closer, voice low and shaking. "And you don't get to use him as your redemption arc." Jimin flinched, the accusation landing brutally, Taehyung continuing. "If you really love him, you'll respect what he asked for, even if it kills you." Jimin's lips trembled as he whispered, "I don't know how to live with this." Taehyung softened just a fraction, exhaustion seeping into his posture. "Neither do I." The door to the dorm opened then, Namjoon entering quietly, eyes scanning the devastation before speaking. "We have a problem." Both of them looked up. Namjoon holding up his phone, headlines already mutating again, rumors spreading faster and uglier. Speculation that Jungkook had been betrayed, abandoned, pushed out. Some fans blaming Jimin, others Taehyung, others calling for disbandment, Namjoon's voice steady but grim. "The narrative is turning vicious and Jungkook isn't here to protect himself." Jimin stood abruptly, panic surging. "Then I'll do it," Namjoon frowned. "Do what?" Jimin's voice shook but didn't waver. "I'll take all of it. The blame, the hate, everything, if it means they stop tearing him apart." Taehyung stared at him in shock. "You can't do that." Jimin met his eyes, tears falling freely. "I already destroyed him. The least I can do is shield him." Namjoon hesitated, then said quietly, "If you go public alone, it could end your career." Jimin nodded once, resolute. "Then let it." Taehyung grabbed his arm, voice breaking for the first time without anger. "You think sacrificing yourself will bring him back?" Jimin shook his head. "No, but it might finally prove I loved him enough to stop being selfish." The room fell silent again, heavier than before, because this time the fire wasn't rage or jealousy. It was consequence. And somewhere far away, Jungkook was rebuilding himself piece by piece, unaware that the people he left behind were about to burn themselves just to protect the space he needed to breathe. The decision didn't feel heroic when the sun finally rose. It felt heavy and terrifying, like standing on the edge of a cliff knowing you were about to jump not to be saved, but to make sure someone else never had to fall again. Jimin sitting rigid at the kitchen table as Namjoon paced, phone pressed to his ear, voices on the other end rising and falling in panic, Taehyung watching from the doorway with an expression caught between disbelief and dread. "You're serious," Taehyung said finally, voice low. "You're really going to do this?" Jimin nodded once, jaw set. Eyes hollow but resolute. "I already took everything from him without asking. This time I'll give something back without expecting anything in return." Taehyung scoffed bitterly. "You think the world will see it that way?" "They'll eat you alive." Jimin's lips trembled into a sad smile. "They already are, I'm just choosing where the fire burns." Namjoon ended the call and turned, his face grave. "The company is against this. They want a neutral statement, vague, shared responsibility." Jimin stood, voice firm despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Neutrality is what broke him. I won't hide behind it again." Namjoon studied him for a long moment before asking quietly, "Do you understand what you're risking?" Jimin nodded. "Everything?" Taehyung stepped forward suddenly, anger flaring again. "And what about me? You'll paint me as the villain too?" Jimin met his eyes without flinching. "No, I'll paint myself as the problem because I was." Taehyung's voice cracked despite his attempt to stay sharp. "You don't get to erase me like that." Jimin shook his head slowly. "I'm not erasing you, I'm finally not hiding behind you." The words hit Taehyung hard enough that he had to look away. Namjoon exhaled deeply. "If you do this, it goes out worldwide in minutes." Jimin picked up his phone, hands shaking slightly. "Then don't wait." Taehyung grabbed his wrist, desperation slipping through his voice. "He asked you to let him go." Jimin swallowed hard, tears burning but unshed. "I am letting him go. This isn't for him to come back. It's so he never has to carry this." Silence fell again, thick and unbearable, until Namjoon finally nodded once, resigned. "Okay." The word landing like a gavel. Hours later, Jimin sat alone in a small studio room. Camera pointed directly at him. No makeup, no styling, no script. Just raw exposure, the red recording light blinking on as he took a shaky breath. "This is Park Jimin," he began, voice already trembling. "And this is something I need to say without filters, without protection, without excuses." Outside the room, staff hovered anxiously, Taehyung leaning against the wall with his eyes closed, unable to watch but unable to leave. Jimin continued, words pouring out like blood from a wound finally opened. "I hurt someone I loved deeply by being afraid of choosing. By seeking comfort instead of commitment, and by letting silence replace honesty. I don't blame anyone but myself." The statement went live moments later, spreading like wildfire, fans watching in shock as Jimin's voice cracked openly. "Jungkook did nothing wrong. Taehyung did nothing wrong. The failure was mine." Social media exploded instantly, disbelief, outrage, pity, praise, condemnation colliding in real time. Jimin finishing with a whisper that felt like a goodbye. "If you're angry, be angry at me. If you need someone to blame, blame me. Just don't turn the people I love into monsters for my mistakes." When the camera shut off, Jimin slumped back, shaking violently, the cost finally crashing down on him as Taehyung rushed in, grabbing his shoulders, voice breaking. "You just destroyed yourself." Jimin let out a sob that sounded almost relieved. "No," he whispered. "I stopped destroying him." Outside, the world burned louder than ever, careers questioned, loyalties tested. But somewhere far away, Jungkook sat alone with his phone in his hand, staring at Jimin's face frozen mid-confession, chest tightening as something he didn't expect rose painfully in his throat. Not hope, not forgiveness, but the first quiet crack in the wall he'd built to survive. The backlash arrived faster than anyone had predicted, not like a wave but like a swarm, relentless and suffocating. Jimin's statement looping endlessly across screens while opinions sharpened into weapons. Some fans praising his honesty, others tearing him apart with a cruelty that felt personal, accusing him of manipulation, of martyrdom, of destroying the group to save his own image. And Jimin sat alone in his room staring at the ceiling as if gravity itself had shifted. His phone vibrating nonstop until he finally threw it across the bed, hands covering his face as his breath came in uneven gasps. "I deserve this," he whispered to no one, the words both punishment and shield, when the door burst open and Taehyung stormed in, eyes blazing, phone clenched in his fist. "Have you lost your mind?" His voice shaking with fury and fear. "They're calling you a liar, a traitor. They're saying you orchestrated everything." Jimin didn't look up, voice flat and exhausted. "Let them," Taehyung snapped. "No, you don't get to let them ruin you like this." Jimin finally looked at him, eyes red but strangely calm. "This is what accountability looks like." Taehyung laughed bitterly, packing the room. "No, this is self-destruction disguised as virtue." Jimin's jaw tightened. "I'm done hiding behind silence." Taehyung spun on him. "And what about me, huh? Now I'm the innocent bystander while you carry the cross." "That's not the truth either." Jimin stood slowly, voice rising for the first time in hours. "I didn't erase you, I protected you," Taehyung scoffed, "by turning yourself into the villain. That doesn't make you brave, it makes you reckless." Jimin's voice cracked. "I couldn't watch them tear Jungkook apart." Taehyung froze at the name, anger faltering into something raw. "And you think this won't hurt him?" Jimin swallowed hard. "I think it hurts him less than knowing he was blamed for loving me." Silence settled, heavy and unresolved, until Taehyung whispered bitterly, "You still think everything revolves around him?" Jimin met his eyes without flinching. "Because this time it does." Taehyung stepped back as if struck, realization dawning that this wasn't obsession anymore, it was penance. "You're burning your future for someone who asked you to let him go." Jimin nodded slowly. "And I am letting him go. This is the last thing I'll do without expecting anything back." Outside the room, Namjoon's raised voice echoed through the hallway, arguments with executives spilling over, threats of suspension, contracts, legal consequences, the machinery of the industry grinding mercilessly. Taehyung exhaled sharply. "They're talking about putting you on indefinite hiatus." Jimin closed his eyes. "Then it's done." Taehyung's voice shook. "You say that like it's nothing," Jimin whispered. "Compared to losing him, it is." The words hanging heavy and dangerous. When Jimin's phone buzzed again on the bed, a single notification slipping through the chaos, an unknown number, Taehyung noticing first. "Are you going to answer that?" Jimin hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't want to hope." The phone buzzed again and again. Taehyung grabbed it impulsively, eyes widening as he read the message, his breath catching. "Jimin," his voice barely audible. "It's Jungkook." The room seemed to tilt as Jimin froze, heart slamming violently against his ribs. "What did he say?" Taehyung swallowed hard before reading aloud. "Stop destroying yourself because of me. That's not love. That's punishment." Jimin's knees weakened, collapsing onto the bed as tears spilled freely. "He hates me." Taehyung shook his head slowly. "And I never asked you to bleed for me," Taehyung continued. "I asked you to let me breathe." Jimin covered his mouth, sobbing silently, the weight of it crushing and clarifying all at once. Taehyung added the final line, voice trembling. "If you really mean what you said, then live. Don't disappear. Don't turn yourself into another ghost I have to mourn." Silence followed, thick and trembling. Jimin finally whispering through tears, "He still cares." Taehyung nodded slowly, pain and relief colliding in his eyes. "Enough to stop you from destroying yourself." Jimin stared at the message like it was both a wound and a lifeline, realizing with brutal clarity that love wasn't about sacrifice that erased you. It was about choosing growth even when forgiveness wasn't promised. And for the first time since everything shattered, the fire inside him shifted, no longer fueled by guilt or desperation, but by something quieter and far more terrifying, the possibility of living honestly without knowing if love would ever return.